Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pen Parentis. We have a very special night tonight.
Hey everybody, it feels super bizarre to be a guest and not a host. It is so strange, but I am very happy to be here as a guest on this lovely Pen Parentis broadcast. And I'm really, really glad that you guys are all out there watching. And hi, Claudette in the front row. And so what I'm going to read to you is from Book and Baby, which is my productivity guide for writers that have kids. And it is all about writing while parenting through all the different phases of life. I didn't actually write it. I kind of amassed it from the wisdom that I found from the 200 plus authors that read in the first 10 years of Pen Parentis. And we've been doing this for 15 years now. So we have even more information. But this book is divided into like infants, toddlers, little kids, big kids, blah, blah, blah. And it goes through time, your energy, and your money, and how you can build it up, how you can find it, how you can make it, and gives you tons and tons of resources. And in the middle, there are all these adorable little things, a story from the salon, from like famous authors that have read for us. And it's their words, their actual words from when they first read for us. So some of them, it's just fun. Anyway, so I hope you like it. Also, this is my short story collection, which I'm not reading from because it's gory and weird and like Twilight Zone-y, and we're writing about parenthood now. So here we go. So this is the summary chapter for the toddler years. So each chapter, each section goes by, there's an introduction, there's money, time, and energy, and then there is a summary. So this is the summary for the toddler years. I'm putting on the glasses. Here we go. The toddler years. These few years will probably be the hardest you have to face if all goes well. Toddlers are autopilot id machines, and they need, or at least want, you pretty much all the time that they're awake. They're busy, they're curious, they notice if you're distracted, they want to be watched constantly. Plus, there'll be toilet training, and there's nothing like cleaning excrement to make you feel mired in graphic domesticity. Plus, you'll be tired because, sorry, most toddlers wake before dawn, and almost all of them have this uncanny knowledge for when their parents are also awake, even if those parental units are off in another room. It's not a great time to tackle a 6-part novel in an alternate universe, unless you have great childcare and zero guilt. But if that's the case, why are you reading this book? Go write your novel, you lucky soul who might also be a sociopath. Anyway, the great part is toddlers are hilarious. They see the world as a magical place, and if you pay attention, they'll show you the world through their eyes. And it isn't long before they become little kids, and they're delighted to have play dates and be left with friendly, vetted babysitters. Writing advice for the toddler years? Hang in there. Write short things and do what you can. And that's what the whole book is like. So it's a fun book. It's available on my website, mmdevoe.com, and it is a good gift. Season's greetings. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Milda.
Thank you.
Everyone, please welcome Keri Bertino.
Yay!
Yay!
Hi, thank you so much for that welcome. I really appreciate it. I'm reading today from an essay called A Guide to Making Art as a Parent that felt appropriate. And this essay was inspired by a really bad advice column. Someone had written into the Slate Care and Feeding column saying, how do you keep making art as a parent? And the response was, all I'm hearing are a bunch of excuses, and if you really wanted it, you would make it work. If others can do it, why can't you? Which got me feeling something. So here is my response to that and the essay that sort of came for it. Richards, the respondent, is far from alone in his lack of understanding of how mothers can be taught to make and persist in making art. In the US, both art making and motherhood are largely viewed as solo endeavors, with success in either viewed as either a confluence of talent and determination. The most prestigious writing program in the country reinforces this view, declaring on their program philosophy website, "We continue to look for the most promising talent in the country in our conviction that writing cannot be taught, but that writers can be encouraged." A bold claim for a program offering a graduate degree. This belief in the primacy of talent in an artist's success is predicated on a narrow understanding of what it means and what is required to support an artist's growth. Contrast Iowa's statement with James Baldwin's take on the role of talent in an artist's development. Asked by the Paris Review if he could discern talent in someone, he answered, "Talent is insignificant. I know a lot of talented ruins. Beyond talent lie all the usual words: discipline, love, luck, but most of all, endurance." Baldwin's valuing of discipline, love, and endurance over talent, and even Iowa's acknowledgement of the importance of encouragement, highlights the importance of what's known as the affective domain of learning. The focus of much teaching and learning is often on the cognitive domain, that is, knowledge and the development of intellectual skills. But the affective domain is how we process and respond emotionally to new experiences, information, and challenges. It's made up of beliefs and mindsets that are hard to quantify, but often constitute the most important learning of our lifetimes. How you came to believe something about the world or about yourself, how you shed old assumptions, how you learned to navigate a new challenge or system. The vast majority of American education focuses on the cognitive domain, on facts and skills, the stuff that's measured on state tests, unless we're teaching character traits like grit to marginalized middle schoolers. But in nearly 2 decades of teaching writing to undergraduate, graduate, and adult writers, I've come to understand that the education of writers has to attend as much to the affective domain of learning as it does to the cognitive. This might sound suspiciously woo-woo. I was once a skeptic. My earliest teacher training was all about outcomes and data-driven significant gains and no excuses. I have since shed or significantly modified almost all of those beliefs, but retained a core tenet that effective teaching really can do something like magic, more than anyone expects it to, that it's our responsibility as teachers to leverage any and all tools to help our students succeed. Besides, artists spend so much of our time trying to portray, describe, and analyze the ineffable. Why would we doubt its importance in our learning? It's often said that writing is a career of attrition, and there are a few more consistent drop-off points in a woman's career than the birth of a child. When we discuss how to teach writers, especially those who are in some way marginalized or vulnerable, we can talk about analyzing and emulating elements of craft, of reading and responding to students' work, but if we are not also tending to teaching them how to keep going, if we are not teaching them to cultivate the practices and mindsets that help them sustain their work when everything else in the world makes not writing the rational choice, we are failing them in one of the most vital domains of their education. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It is such a delight to be here on Pen Parentis. I'm so excited. I'm going to be reading an essay from my new book, Writing While Parenting. And unlike Milda's book and Keri's essay, there is nothing to learn from this book. It is mostly a whole bunch of parenting fails that teach me a little bit about writing. So I'm going to read one called Narratives Building Blocks, and it takes place when my daughters were 2 and 4 years old. And both of them are very creative kids. My 4-year-old, though, is very creative like her mother. She really loves to build things. She loves to create things. My 2-year-old is a little bit more like me. She likes to walk into a room and think about whatever she can mess up. So this one's called Narratives Building Blocks. My 4-year-old is in the living room playing with magnetiles. She is as focused as I've ever seen, paying as much attention to shapes as to colors, aesthetics as to structure. But I don't have a story until I have 2 stories, writes Grace Paley, and along comes my 2-year-old. It's as though she's just finished watching Donnie Darko and is convinced that destruction too is a form of creation. My 4-year-old steps in front of her sister, suggests they engage in parallel play. But my 2-year-old is a postmodernist at heart. She fakes left, jukes right, then swipes a square from the bottom of the tower and watches it collapse. There is no center, she shrieks. The center cannot hold. My 4-year-old should know by now that our attachment to the impermanent is at the very root of our suffering. That, as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi writes, the important thing is to enjoy the activity for its own sake and to know that what matters is not the result, but the control one is acquiring over one's attention. But she looks at her once magnificent creation, now lying in a pile of ruins, and starts to cry. I pick my 2-year-old up, take her to her room, and tell her that she needs to apologize. Apologize, she says. Apologize for what? For reminding this family that, as Derrida points out, deconstruction is not an operation that supervenes afterwards from the outside, but is always at work in the work? Such is the paradox of progress, she screams from her crib. Kill your darlings. There's no use trying to reason with a 2-year-old, so I pull down the shades and turn off the lights, close the door, and leave. But she refuses to be punished. She begins rattling her baby Elmo's head against the bars of her crib to what sounds like the tune of We Shall Overcome. I go back in and confiscate all of her dolls. I want her to understand that vulnerability is at the heart of creativity. I want her to acknowledge how much courage it takes to create something from nothing. But she is adamant now that true courage comes from knowing that our creations are always on the verge of collapse. I try to convince her that she is suffering from massive cognitive distortions, but she is long past listening to me. She believes in the transformative powers of art, and she has transformed her crib into a trampoline. She is jumping wildly now, master of her own private mosh pit, lost in that ecstatic lightness of being.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you, and sorry.
No, I was super excited with the Donnie Darko and the Yates, and now with bringing in the Kundera at the end, bring it. That's good. All 2-year-olds should be that clever. Preschool, early education.
And
That's right.
did she learn all that from you? Do you actually say things and then she just copies them, or does she really get it?
I might have given her a little bit of that dialogue, was, my own interpretation of her actions, but she definitely just comes out with crazy things. Yeah. You never know what she's going to say. She's older now. She's 10 now, but you never know what she's going to say. Both of them.
Doctoral thesis ready for action.
So, okay. I'm going to ask a question and then we'll go back and forth, vacillate between me and Vanessa. How's that? So since it's the end of the year and we're about to go into a new year, what is your best advice to close shop and deal with the holidays before you go into this new year? Ben?
To close shop, you mean in terms of the writing stuff?
Well, I know Milda writes no matter what. There could be a fire and she would still be writing, but I don't, for me, it's when there's Christmas and the kids are running around and they're home, nothing really gets done.
Yeah.
And then I feel kind of miserable and I feel like, well, I should be working, but I'm not working. But how do you deal with it? That stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I can't tell if I'm frozen again, but I'm going to
No, you're
pretend
not.
like
You're
I'm
good.
not. There's a quote. Oh, great, great. There's a quote from the Dalai Lama that I really love, who says, I try to meditate, 1 to 2 hours a day, except for when I'm busy. Then I meditate 3 to 4 hours a day. So for me, I think that the crazier the world gets and the busier our lives get, the more important it is for me to continue to have those daily touchstones with my creative life, just as a way of keeping me grounded and stable. So it's almost like the more I can create that sacred space to tune things out, the more I'm just not even like attending to the rhythms of the rest of my life.
Ah, that is really great advice. I think I'm gonna do that. Milda, how about you? Why don't you share some of what you do?
So today I was on a Zoom with a bunch of writers, and one of them was really struggling with this, because for her, end of year was a pile up of looking back and like top 10 lists and like all the things that she has done or failed to do or whatever, and lots of very emotional, like, missing people and just lots of stuff. And I realized literally today on that call, I spent almost no time looking back. And that's just my personality, is to what's next? Like, what do I have to do? What's on my to-do list? What's my next thing? What can I get done? And I struggle to stay in the moment, like to just be like, oh, right now I have 15 minutes. What am I going to do with that 15 minutes? And so then I ground myself in the now that way. But I don't spend any time on looking backwards, which is bad. Like, there are things that you should be doing. So like, where other people can't move forward, I can't spend any time looking back. So I mean, I think we all have our flaws and our wise things, but I think it's really important that like no one thing is going to work for everybody. So what works for me, what works for Ben is not going to work for Keri. And it's going to be like all the things. And I don't know, it's really important to keep exploring and trying new stuff if things aren't working.
Well, I think the key is to take your flaws and turn it into strength.
That'd be nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Keri, how about you?
Yeah, I do it differently, which is that I try to be really cognizant of the fact that we only have so many hours in the day, and that me beating myself up for not getting to my writing when I'm also like preparing for 6 people to come to my home and like wrapping up a semester does not make me a bad person nor a fraud. And so where that essay that I was reading from kind of ends up is thinking about the ER in writer, like the ER in mother, as like a kind of kinship as opposed to an action verb, and thinking about your long-term relationship to that. And so my get through the holidays is grace with yourself and self-compassion, and knowing like we only have so many spoons for the day. And if you can pick it up again in the new year, and that's all good. But just knowing too that you will pick it up in the new year. You know what I mean? It's not like putting it off forever. It's knowing like these next 2 weeks, my kids are home. It's actually probably not going to happen for me so much right now, but come January 3rd, when they go back to school, I'm taking my laptop to the Center for Fiction, and we are getting down. So
awesome. Mm-hmm. Vanessa, how about you?
Just in terms of the holidays, I am a bit like Milda. I think I'm just gonna write through it. I am quite half an hour here, 15 minutes there kind of person. And that's how I do it.
Wonderful. All right. So we have a comment from Jennifer Zawili. Am I saying that correctly? How do you write about things that aren't children? I feel like parenting isn't a thing I do. It's the lens through which I see the world. Any comments?
I have all the things to say about that.
Yes.
When I started Pen Parentis, it was so much about that, because people kept asking me, like, they're like, oh, you have kids? You're a writer? You have kids? do you have a mommy blog? And I was like, no, I have an MFA. Like, come on. Like, I did not want that. And everybody was writing a mommy blog, and everybody was trying to make a 6-figure, like that. They had just had the first 6-figure mommy blogger, you know? And so everybody was like jumping on the writing about their kids thing. And I was like, guys, I want to write a novel about other things, you know? And a lot of why Pen Parentis is the way it is because I wanted people to have the freedom that if they want to write about their kids, they can. But if they don't, they shouldn't feel this pressure to write about, like, why? You don't have to write about you don't have to write about your trauma. You don't have to write about your breakup. You don't have to write about anything you don't want to write about. And yet you can, and you should if you want to. Like, it's just, I don't know, like all this idea that like other people have to tell you what you're going to write about, it bothers me. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, people do make that mistake. And recently I read a book by someone who, the protagonist was a mom, and she wrote it so well that when I met her, I was like, oh my God, you had the same experience as me. And she's like, no, I never had kids. I was like, oh my God, you wrote that so well. That's incredible. How about you, Keri?
I'm wrapping up a novel right now about a woman who does not have children, nor does she want them. And that's just something that exists as part of her character and is not a major plot point or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, same as Milda, I think I sort of just, and also as the question asker, Jennifer, right? Like it's a lens. And so I do think that being a parent has affected the way that I think about the experiences of others. I think like for me, at least in earliest parenthood, there's that moment where your whole like heart just feels cracked open, and you're like, everybody was a baby once, and everybody was loved like this. And can I expand that to the rest of the world? And you know, then we commute one day on the Q train and that's gone. But I do try to access that as much as possible, I think, in my narration, while avoiding sentimentality, because obviously we can't do that, especially for women. Real bad idea. But thinking about like, how can I show that same kind of compassion for my characters, especially when they're having a hard time showing it towards themselves.
Ben?
Yeah, I think for me, becoming a parent was such a radical transformation for me. You know, my first couple of books were really about my time abroad as a Peace Corps volunteer, and then I spent some time traveling to other places, and I just had a lot of sort of experiences with just a great deal of freedom of travel and sort of independent living. And parenting was such a transformative experience. It was really all I was writing about for the first 5 years when my kids were young. It was sort of all consuming, both in my like daily life, but in terms of just the way that I was thinking about everything. So for me, it was almost like a great joy to be so immersed in this experience and writing about it and thinking about it. And it actually took about 5 years before I was starting to explore other thoughts in other realms.
Yeah.
I think Ben are you there? I think he froze again.
It's okay.
Keri, one thing about your profile that really interested me was mentioned being neurodivergent, and I wondered how that sort of affected your perspective as a creative parent, or what you think that added perhaps as a creative parent.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, that definitely adds to the need for self-compassion and flexibility in my writing process. I came to realize kind of late, like, oh, it's not that I'm lazy. There's actually like real issues here. And, you know, once I figured that out, actually things became a lot easier. But I also do think that in terms of let's see here. In terms of the drafting process and the editing process, like those are very, those can kind of look two different ways depending on like brain mode that day. And sometimes it can just be very exploratory and kind of sensing like there's all these connections and I don't know what they are yet, but I know that these things all sort of belong together. Like the essay that I was reading from before, I had spread out on that carpet at some point with like all of these notes, and it's like these all belong. Like somehow James Baldwin is talking to this guy at Slate, is talking to the class I was teaching in Baltimore, is talking to the Writing Through Motherhood workshop, is like drawing from this study, is talking to like Felicia Rose Chavez and Matthew Solis, and just sort of trying to figure out how those all worked. And so really leaning in, I think, to the like the associative and connective part, and then knowing that the next step for me has to be like an intentional convergence. Like divergent thinking can come really naturally to me, but then I have to work actually really hard to put structure and order into it, and that can be a challenge. But now that I know that it is and why and how to approach it as my writing process, it's easier.
How about you, Vanessa? I mean, this is something that we've talked about before.
Yes, and what I definitely some of what Keri said resonated with me in terms of not having brain days, different brain days, and not necessarily being sure about how something is coming together, but trusting that it is in its own way. But listening to Keri saying she spread the papers out behind her, and she's looking for connections. It made me also reflect on the fact that no two children are the same. I think nobody's parenting experience is exactly the same. And I wondered if anyone could speak to perhaps some of the more quirky aspects of their being writer parents, like how something that maybe sticks out to them that perhaps might seem unconventional in how they have to write as parents, just in order to get stuff done or to make it fun, or, is there, I don't know if Milda or Ben can speak to that, or yourself, Christina, can speak to that too.
Well, let's start with the pros. Milda?
Oh, sure. So I don't know if this makes me a terrible mom, but I put my son's infant bed on, I had a very long table that I had, my cousin built me this very, very long work table because I wanted a big table and I couldn't afford anything. And it had enough space for a baby to sleep on it. And so nap time, like my child was on my desk and I just worked, right? And then he'd wake up and it'd be nursing and still typing. And then I'd play and we'd have a really good playtime. And then he'd go to sleep and I'd put him on the desk and I'd just go back to work. But I really liked that involvement of him being right there. Like he was just, this is weird, but I thought of it as like, the peasants that they'd give birth in the field and they'd put their baby in the backpack and then they just keep working. And I thought that it was kind of like that. Like I wanted the kid to be like, my son to be like, just integral to my life, not extra work, but just integral, like integrated. And so having him sort of be there. And then do you remember those Jiminy's that you like had this floor mat and it had like this weird cross thing with like mobiles and things hanging from it. So when he was a little bit older, I'd put him on the Jiminy and he'd like be playing and I could just talk to him or work. And I don't know, it was like and I sometimes felt really weird about it, but I was just like, you know what, that works for me. I needed the writing. I needed that time to myself that was in my head. And yeah, so I did.
It reminds me a little bit of sometimes you have these images of the writer working and the cat is going away.
It's like in the way, yeah.
The laptop, but here it's your child. And I think that there's something really inspiring in that, because I think for a lot of parents, the sort of fixation is, what do I do with them so I can go off and write. And I think, anyone listening, try that approach. Try not to like fight the presence of your child so much. Try to, incorporate it.
And that just like that. My son was a great nurser. So it really, if you have a kid who doesn't latch or whatever, like there's ways that this could be, So like you could never do that. So there was like, I mean, it is super individual, so don't feel bad.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to say that I was one of these people. So not only do I have ADHD, I mean, mega ADHD, my kid had it. So the two of us were like screaming at it, like, it was like this constant screaming, and I was like all frazzled. It was really difficult for me to write and get things going. But I do want to say that because everyone's process is different, I finally, like Keri said, I came to terms with I didn't discover I had ADHD till I was 38. So, it wasn't until then that it was suddenly like, oh yeah, I'm not lazy. I actually have been working. I just have this kid who won't stop moving and won't stop giving himself a concussion. So I need to pay attention, but the writing will come. And that was really hard for me, really hard. And if you're one of those parents, I'm my heart is there for you. Really, I get it. Ben, do you have something you want to add?
Well, one thing, I'm so sorry. I think I lagged out. Yeah. So I'm so sorry. My internet has been in and out. One thing that struck me in terms of the transition was I think I had to learn how to write when I wasn't writing. So with poetry in particular, because you're paying so much attention to language at such a close level, I would always write, with pen and paper or sometimes on the computer, but it was like such spotlight focus. And when my kids were real young, they were both horrible sleepers. And I would be up in the early morning, on that ball, just bouncing with my daughter, trying to get her to go back to sleep. But it was actually this time of like incredible imagination. Sometimes I would be drinking coffee, thinking I had time to write, and then I would just be bouncing and my mind would be dreaming. And I learned to just sort of like allow that to happen, to sort of almost like capture it and then just write it down as soon as I could put my daughter down, or doing dishes or driving, just finding small moments where I could allow myself for my, imagination to take me different places. And in many ways, I think that facilitated just a totally new way of writing, which I fought for a long time. I really, sort of like Christina was saying, the flaws become the opportunities or the strengths. I think it took me a long time to sort of see that and realize that and embrace that. But once I did, it opened up a lot new doors that I hadn't sort of tried to go through beforehand.
I think one of the worries I always had was I'm going to forget, right? But I realized that you don't actually forget, right? Like you think you're going to forget, and maybe you do for the time being. But when I look at all my scribbles, you guys have scribbles, right? When I look at my scribbles, I'm like, oh, I didn't forget. It's right there. Right? You can trust yourself. It's there. Okay, so what are your plans going? Oh, wait, we have a question from the audience. Where is it? I just saw it here.
There's Karen. Karen has a really good question.
Yeah, Karen listener wrote, I really appreciate all the advice and always appreciate Milda's work and her group. I want to say that all the advice in the world, all the inspiration and adages can't give working parents the gift of time or childcare for a block of time. Retreats give money for childcare, don't help. We need more retreats and activities, even one day, that offer on-site childcare. What are the chances that this might ever happen?
Well, Keri. Speak, Keri.
When I think I offered writing through motherhood, I don't know, like 8 times. That's not possible actually, because my daughter's only 7. So let's say 6 times. And pre-pandemic, it met in my living room, and we had a babysitter in the kids' room down the hall, and I did not charge extra for that. It was sort of baked into the cost of it. So it's something that we had going, and it's not something that I was able to sustain indefinitely when, pandemic hit, and then I took on different jobs. So I'm not teaching that class in my house anymore. But yeah, completely agree with you that that's something that we need, is just, these two things next to each other. And I think also thinking about designing workshops for parents that aren't necessarily requiring a lot of work in between, but instead can be like, you come, you do the thing, and then you're kind of done, right? Because the traditional workshop method of, reading 3 people's submissions and marking them up, that's a lot of time that you might not have, in addition to trying to keep up with your own writing. So I think just thinking creatively about what these can look like. But if I win the lottery, deal would be like open up a retreat that definitely has like childcare here and people writing over there, and let's make it
I think they're on our website, the Pen Parentis website. We have lists of different residency programs that have that family retreat. You can bring your children, and so I would take a look at our website and find those places.
There's on that same Anna, it's writerparentannex.com. And on there, not only are there writing retreats that you can sort through, some of them give retreat money for childcare, but some of them, like Christina said, do have actual, like, they bring your kid. But there's also, what's really worked for a lot of people in our group is write-ins. So we have a list of free write-ins, because we don't offer them, but people, even just with their own partner, they like find somebody from grad school. They don't even have to have kids, but just opening your computer and like turning on a Zoom as though you're in a room with another writer. Somehow that gives enough accountability to make you write for that hour. And it doesn't have to be like forever. It can be 20 minutes, whatever it is that you've arranged with another human being, to just sort of spiritually be working, like it's work time. This is your office. And it can be like, we have people that do it like in the middle of the night. But we have a list of those also on the website you're welcome to look at, that are just random places that have free write-ins. And it seems to work for people. I don't know. Me, I hate it when there's other people around. I'm like, get out of my space. And that's why it's hard for me when they're kids. Because I'm like, I know that you're not doing anything but watching television, but stop it. Like, I want my mental space to be very, very open, and it's very hard to find that after you have kids. But
well, that's why I do residencies, so I can get away, like, and have a clear.
And if you can't afford a residency, like, sneak out, tell people you're going to the gym, and go to a library.
Well, you are working out. You're just working out your brain.
Yes. And what do you do to get this kind of like mental space? Do you do residencies? Do you do like when you're writing, or do you just like fit it in your life? Like when you were writing this essay book.
Yes. Sorry, it's so frozen here. I'm hearing about every other 4th word that people are saying. So apologies for that. I do not do residencies. I wake up very early in the morning. So I teach high school full time. I teach creative writing at a public high school outside of Boston, which means that I'm sort of getting everyone in my family up by like 6 a.m. So for me, I like to get up a few hours before that and take the time when my mind is still somewhat in dreamland, and write then. And
great mental space.
It's not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird time when you're not quite awake, but you've got a little bit of coffee sort of pushing you forward, and I'm not quite thinking about my to-do list, of like, all the things that I need to do, and it feels like this incredibly free and sacred time to just be in my imagination. So, I think, Milda, you were saying, I caught you saying that like everyone's life and the demands work differently. But for me, finding those odd hours, but especially I think, I never want my writing to sort of be a sacrifice to my wife or a burden to my wife, for me, just being with my kids and being a parent is very important, and being present with them is very important. So I really like trying to carve those weird hours out of the day, for the family reasons, but also like I think my imagination is just so much more active at that time. Yeah. Later in the afternoon, I'm totally useless, but in the morning, I'm on fire.
That's awesome. Keri, are you the same? I'm like a midnight oil person. I'm like, okay, finally work, finally ready to go to bed, leave me alone. It's 2 a.m. I'm in. What do you write, Keri?
It shifts based on my schedule and my kids' schedule. Like I am all for routines that work for you, and then if they don't, discard them. And so I started a new job this semester where I was taking the ferry to East 90th Street from the Brooklyn Navy Yard every morning. And that was my 40 minutes of writing time every day before my day job. And I knew that at the end of the day, I was too fried to pick it up again. I did not want to look at a screen. Brain wasn't going to work, didn't even try. So that was my writing time this semester. Over the summer, I had both kids in like day summer camp, and I mentioned the Center for Fiction, but got, a membership there. I think it's $180 for the year. And it's a space going back to like neurodivergence. Like I cannot with like, is there music? Are there people on Zoom calls? Like I can't focus that way. And this is just like the most ideal space for me to just like sit down, and there are other writers around, but everybody's just kind of doing their thing. And, it was really perfect for me to have a place to go do it, and then pick my kids up from camp for a couple hours. So I will say too, it gets so much easier when they're school aged. If your kids aren't school aged yet, like once that,
hang in there,
government childcare tricks in, like it changes things.
Yeah. Once you get enough sleep too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I didn't write for the first 18 months of my son's life because he wasn't sleeping, and so I wasn't either. And I was mush. I was just mush. But then once he did, the first thing I started doing was writing. Like as soon as he started sleeping, I was like, we got to do this.
You know what I find really interesting? Vanessa, you travel a lot. And how do you get I don't know about you guys, but like if I do anything different from my schedule, I can't get my mind around the work. Like I know, Milda, you don't have this issue. You can write pretty much any day, anywhere, I think. But Vanessa, how do you do it? How?
I actually don't think I travel a lot. So I think that maybe just the times when we've spoken, I have been coming from somewhere. I think the release of my novel has led to more travel. That's
I see.
Like to travel to the UK to promote the book over there. I'm the same as you, Christina. I really do get thrown off by travel, and that's one reason why I actually dislike travel because I need that routine. I'm like Ben, I wake up early, so if my body clock gets thrown off, I can't really wake up 5 a.m. For some time, and then everything kind of goes Pete Tong, as we say in the UK.
Ben, are you here? Are you with us? Okay, so what are your goals for this coming year? How do you prepare going into this new year? Like for me, I'm just trying to like wind things down and make sure I go through all my papers, which are like stacks and stacks of papers, to make sure like, I haven't forgotten something, whatever, which I always have. But I don't even make time to think of this next thing. So like, how do you prepare for this coming year? And do you make plans for like what you want done this coming year? I mean, what's it like for you guys? Ben? Okay, we'll come back to you. Keri, how about you?
Yeah. Also, if you were hearing a child going "blah ha ha ha" in the background, that was my household. Enjoy.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, I saw. I was like, oh, other people heard that, didn't it? It's bedtime. For next year, it's actually not too much of a question for me. I've got a book I am wrapping up. I've got a novel I'm in final edits on. I cannot wait to sink my teeth back into that, buddy, and wrap it up. I feel like I've got great momentum on it, and I'm really, really excited to get back to it with a shift in schedule next year. So I'm ready, and then I'm on to the next.
You can feel that excitement.
Yeah, no, I'm there. I'm ready. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben? Okay, Milda.
I feel so bad for Ben. I hate it when I don't have a good connection. It's so hard. I like to say, first of all, I want to say, like, I'm totally into this stream of people telling, like, whether they do night hours or morning hours. It's just cute. But I am keeping open mind. I have plans, but they're very tentative, and they're like, I'm just trying to stay very open to, I want to do a longer project. I'm not sure which one. And I just want it to be really good. So I'm being like careful for once and sort of going slow. Yeah. So that's kind of wild.
Awesome.
For me. I hope Ben comes back. Ben, where are you?
Vanessa, how about you? What are you planning for this coming year?
Well, I'm working on the second novel. So a bit of pressure there to sort of get that done in the first half of the year. So a lot of so the 5 a.m. Mornings are going to be crucial because I need to get some stuff out of the way before the school run starts. And yeah, just and that's why today's been really interesting, because just finding different ways to keep going and to, shake it up. If it gets tough one week, then perhaps like Keri, I'll spread my papers around, and another week perhaps I'll lay my 13-year-old on the desk and use that as my inspiration. No, but yeah, just I'm quite a sort of, I'm still learning my neurodivergency because I was also late diagnosed, and as my workload has increased as a writer, which is both amazing but also very challenging, I'm finding I'm finding out about myself and how I can work and what I can do, and just, yeah, every day is a new revelation.
Ben, how about you? What are your plans going into this new year? Okay, we'll come back to you.
Is that for me? Am I
yes,
back on?
That is for you.
Oh, okay. I keep getting kicked out and coming back in. I can't hear anything. I am so sorry. This feels like parenting. You try to do something, there's like 1,000 interruptions. You don't know if anyone can hear you. This is just like, this is perfect. This is what it's like. And I've enjoyed every single second of it as well. So I think the question was,
exactly
I
like
could hear a little bit of what Vanessa was saying. Yes, right? Like, it's like you're just trying to do something. You try to do the dishes, your daughter's pirouetting into the wall, everyone's crying. All right. So my hope is just to be okay with that all. Like, I feel I have so little control over most of my life. But when I am writing, I really so much love just the freedom of it. Like, I love being able to be in a space where, what Frost calls just to stay against confusion, and it just feels open and it feels exciting, and yeah, there's just something so freeing about it. So for me, it's just like making that space again and again, and just being okay when things are a total hot mess.
Love it.
I know we're coming upon the hour, which is crazy, but before, I don't want to go until you guys give your one piece of advice that you would give to all the struggling writers, parents out there who are like, help, what am I going to do? Or, my writing sucks. What is that one piece of advice you would give them?
I would say trust the words. Like, trust your own words, that's why you're doing this, right? And they're there for you. They're just going to come. Like, they'll come eventually. I don't know. You have to just trust that.
Keri?
The writing sucking is part of the process. Like, you can't write a book without some of it sucking at first. So just kind of get a little bit comfy with that, or at least accept it, even if it doesn't feel comfortable. I have also come to learn that I teach MFA students, and whenever one of them comes to me freaking out that all of a sudden, like, their book makes no sense and they don't know why they're working on this project anymore and they should throw it out, and why are they doing this, I can now actually say, like, hold tight, like, you are about to actually have a breakthrough on it. Like, I now recognize this as part of the writing process. Like, just it's okay, this is normal, you'll get there. And it's like magic. They come to me, I get these emails like, you were right, I figured out this whole thing about my book. And so just know that, like, it really is part of the process, and it doesn't mean that you're a fraud or that you'll never figure it out. You probably will. It's just your brain trying to level up.
Awesome. How about you, Ben?
I really believe in having multiple things that you're working on.
Yeah.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah.
I believe in having multiple things that you're working on, so that if something is not working, you move on to something else and you try something. And if that's not working, you got something else that you can go. So that you never sort of experience that, like, total sense of just being stuck and unable to do something. And then when you come back to it, you're often able to see it with a fresh set of eyes. And also, I really like William Stafford's advice, which is just to lower your standards, so that you're not putting too much stress on the perfectionism and the hope of things. Like, you have fun with it, and then eventually something breaks through.
Yeah,
I like have fun with it better than lower your standards. But have fun. But really, if you're not having fun, like, try to have fun. Like, it should be like, entertain yourself, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And
so
also have
serious.
fun in life too. I mean, there was a period where I was like, I'm going to sit here and I'm not leaving until I have a page. And I would sit there all day and there would be no words, none. So it wasn't until I went out and had fun that I came back replenished, excited, had ideas. Have fun. How about you, Vanessa? Any last minute questions?
I agree with what everyone else has said. I call it following the energy, but I also, if I absolutely have to get down a page, then I do lower my standards, and just in order to hit the deadline. So different strategies. I wondered if perhaps the writers could speak to who has inspired them in terms of, like, being creative and to keep going as a writer.
Well, Margaret Atwood is my hero. Like, she has a kid. She's doing great. She writes what she wants. She started when she was 16. She didn't bother with any of the MFA crap. Just wrote and brilliantly got better and better and better, and is just genius. And also a great literary citizen. Very nice. Like, I've never met her. I wish. But I just think she's so amazing. And, like, once I tweeted at her when Twitter was young, I tweeted at her, like, do you ever stop getting rejected? Like, what happens? Have you stopped getting rejections? And she literally tweeted back at me, who was nobody, and said, of course I always get rejections and they always hurt. Just keep going. And I was like, oh, I'm done.
Oh God, you have to
Done.
love her. Oh man.
Yeah.
I love her now. I love her.
I know.
I know.
Because she just is like ordinary, amazing. Like the very fact that she's like, I'm just ordinary is like, no, you're not. You're just like a grand hero. Like, it's nuts.
I was once actually at a reading and someone like turns to me, she's like, I can never figure out dialogue, dialogue's so hard. And I'm like, oh, well, if you want to learn about dialogue, read Grace Paley. And everything you need to learn about dialogue, you'll learn from Grace Paley. She's like, really, really? And I get up and Grace Paley is behind me.
Wow.
And she goes, oh, really? That's so nice. And I'm like, Grace Paley. That was Grace Paley. And she leaves and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to get her to sign my book. I was so mad. And then I see her a year later and she's in the street with her daughter. They're shopping in Provincetown. And I go running across the street and I'm like, Grace Paley, last year this happened. And I just want you to know, yes, you everything you need to learn about dialogue, I learned from you, and you're amazing. She's like, oh, and she puts her hands on my cheeks like this. All day I'm walking around like this. Keri, how about you?
I would say, I mean, it's such an interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, he's not frozen.
Yeah, actually, Ben, like you're good right now.
Go for it, Keri. Yeah.
Take that moment.
All right. I'm going to jump in as well.
Yeah.
Before I get sucked into the vortex of the internet. One thing that strikes me about the question of like who inspires you with creativity, not necessarily with writing, but one of the things that I loved about when my kids were younger was just how quickly they moved into their imagination and into a sense of play. And I often joke that I often feel like I have front row tickets to a Broadway play that I didn't really want to go to in the first place. But they're just like constantly like just singing and acting and like, especially if you put them in the bath or the shower, like it is full blown production.
Well,
and there's something about that. There's something about young kids. Yeah. Like their willingness to go from like real world to imaginative play. And just for the joy of play without any, worry about what they're doing. I think that more than anything inspires me to just remember how to get myself into that dreamlike trance. But in terms of writers, Vonnegut. I love Vonnegut.
It's cool.
Me too.
Christine, if we ever meet in real life, can I put my hands on your cheeks? And
my God. And I'll be like, and Keri remembered.
I'll ask for consent, I promise. But that's amazing. For me, I remember reading Sarah Ruhl's book of essays, 100 essays I don't have time to write. And they're these like little mini essayettes that she wrote with two like toddler twins. And some of them are on parenting and making art. And some of them are about theater. And some of them are about teaching. And some of them are really random. But just that particular work of just, I love all the books about parenting that are just written in these little crots where you can just see like, yeah, I wrote that like while they slept for 13 minutes and got that. So that was an early one. Right now too, my friend Claire Beams, who I met on the first day of grad school, she and I had a writing partnership for years where we would just sort of send weekly check-ins. And so that's been a sustaining friendship for a really long time. She has a book coming out in 2024 called The Garden. Check it out. And then the last thing I would say too is that in addition to thinking that question earlier about how do you write about things other than parenting or how do you use it as a lens, one thing that I noticed that affected me in parenthood is that all of a sudden I felt like I had this authority that I didn't have before. And I don't mean like bossing around tiny people, but instead like I was responsible for other people and I had to I was the person who could, protect them and had to respond to them. And that kind of changed my relationship to myself somewhat too. And so I would say like be inspired by that same kind of like caretaking and like looking for the best and really being sensitive that you show to your children. Like try to show it to yourself and your characters. And I think you can get a lot from that too.
I swear this has been amazing. Thank you to our authors for such a great night. Thank you, Milda, for being here for us. And thank you, Vanessa, for hosting. You're going to see a lot more of Vanessa coming in the coming months. So everyone, be excited. I want to say finally that we have our January Poetry Salon coming up in January on the 9th. And we have Ann Townsend, we have Joan Kane, and Leticia Del Toro. So please join us then for some wonderful poetry.
We're so excited. We love the poetry.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful end of the year. And Happy New Year.